Welcome to Vital Ventures, the podcast where we uncover the secrets of successful health and wellness entrepreneurs. Each episode, we'll be diving into the minds of industry leaders to discover the strategies and habits that have propelled them to the top of their game. Join us as we explore the world of health and well-being entrepreneurship and learn from the best in the industry. Hey, this is Jared Woodruff. Thank you for joining me today on Vital Ventures. My guest today, Dr. Aidan Kaye. Is that correct? Did I say that right, Doc?
Aidan Kaye.
Aidan Kaye. I apologize. See, I'm just, I'm bumbling
No
through
worries.
this world. I'm barely making it. So, thank you. Dr. Kaye is the owner and the founder, correct, of Podium Performance Care in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Yep. Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
So, Doc,
Yes.
tell us how is it that you, or how do you empower patients that come to you for care? What is it that you are working on, and what kind of tools and modalities are you using to help them achieve their goals? And what are those goals? That's a big question, so I'll just let you take it.
Yeah. And tell me if I get off topic too.
No,
I can
okay.
ramble. So, yeah, essentially what I'm trying to do is create a place where we can solve the problems that people are having through a goal-centered approach. I think that there's a lack in the conventional medical model where we're shortening patient appointments and we're not really communicating effectively with patients, where people are left wanting in a lot of ways. So I'm hoping to fill that gap by creating this place where we combine the high level sports medicine that we do with professional athletes, making that a little bit more accessible to everybody by using techniques such as neurofunctional acupuncture, really individualized physical therapy, physio sessions, a lot of movement medicine, joint manipulation, manual therapy approaches to really not only just get people out of pain very quickly, but also to empower them and give them the tools that they need to understand what's going on so that they don't ever have to deal with this ever again. I think it's very important that people leave with not only results in each visit, but also they're learning about everything that they can do to stay out of pain for the rest of their lives. I see a lot
That's
of
excellent.
injuries that just kind of, yeah, I see a lot of injuries that are essentially like just band-aided, like they just get
Yeah.
a real quick fix, but then they're they have to come back all the time to maintain that. And I don't really believe in that. I think that everything has a solution. And if we are treating the root causes of things, that we can actually get really monumental changes. And people are not only empowered to essentially work on things themselves, but they have the tools to understand how to essentially go beyond that. So it's like, let's give them the foundation and then start building the house on top of that. And that
Yeah.
really
I love that
translates
so
well, like
much.
once people kind of leave the clinic, essentially what they'll notice is that not only are they out of pain and injury, but like they're actually performing better because now they're doing movements right and correctly rather than what they were doing before.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And I know that maybe this is anecdotal, but I have seen so many times someone I know who would be a great patient of chiropractic, would be a great candidate for care, which I think everyone is. They will not go see the chiropractor because their predetermined belief is that it's not in the doctor's best interest to actually heal me, so he's going to, or she is going to keep me there forever, and I want to get rid of the problem. And that's a big objection to pursuing chiropractic care and really just functional care of any kind is I don't want to keep going for life. I want to solve the problem. They're not going to solve the problem. They never do. I don't know where that came from, but it's what I hear quite often. And it's really refreshing. That's one of the first things that you knock down is you're saying, look, as a doctor, I don't want you here forever. That means I'm not doing my job. You shouldn't be here forever. And that's very refreshing to hear outright that you actually bring that up.
Yeah.
Why is it that you mentioned that specifically, that you brought this up specifically? Is there a reason or a story behind why you believe that patients should not be with you very long?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. Um, I have a history, I would say, with being in the medical model. Like we all come out bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Coming out of
Right.
school, we want the best for our patients, at least, from what I could see. Um, we always want to do our best. We want to, help people as much as we can, but we come out into
Hmm.
a system that's been in place. And that system sometimes isn't very conducive to that being done. I've always thought that like, hell, I could spend an hour with patients and then things would be so much better. But I remember coming out into a clinic where I was essentially forced to spend less and less and less time. They were like, up, you spend a little bit too much time with people. And I'm like, that shouldn't be that big of a deal. Like, we're actually making results happen. Um, but what I recognized was um, that, some other doctors and things like that would essentially focus on just banging through patients, and they would see the same people over and over and over again, and it would just be like there was no plan. It was just like, come back, we'll keep you fixed or whatever. And I was like, wow, this guy's always so busy, but like he's so busy. um but also it's like I don't really see any life-changing results happening. I don't see any like big moments that are happening, and that's something
Right.
that's very near and dear to my heart, because it's like that's what I want for people. Like I've been on my own personal health journey for quite some time, and I want to make sure that I can give the things that I learned to people as much as possible. And I want to essentially create that environment for that, to allow that to happen. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think that we're in this kind of system where it's like there are good doctors that are going to make that happen, and then there are doctors who are kind of succumbing to, I guess, the systemic nature of how medicine is run in America, where it's like less appointments. We're just going to, essentially do as many appointments as we can because we're getting less money from the insurance companies. Um, so the model is just churn, right? Whereas
Yeah.
like the people who are usually not cash based, or like they have a better system, they had to create their own. You can create that, but it's a lot more difficult, and so that's kind of the thing that I'm running into in the practice. It's like, how do I do that? So, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot there if we were to unpack.
Oh yeah.
So I love that, and I don't think that because something is difficult, that's a good reason or a good excuse not to do it, right? And
Hmm.
obviously you don't believe that either, because it is difficult to run a practice where you're constantly having to refresh I'm speaking just purely from a business perspective,
Hmm.
having to refresh your practice because you're graduating patients is
Hmm.
exhausting.
Hmm.
It's exhausting, and it's a lot of work. And from a business perspective, if you had a CEO who wasn't a doctor, they would be telling you, Dr. K, you have to stop this. We have to keep people longer. We have to retain patients. We've got to get our lifetime value up. We have to increase billings. And I think that's maybe where a lot of that model has come from.
Hmm.
Is one, I think you're right with the insurance. I've heard that from so many doctors that insurance is running the practice if you let it.
Yep.
They will bully
100%.
you into telling you what care you can provide, what diagnosis you're basically allowed to, and conclusions you're basically allowed to come to through some algorithm or protocol they have that it has nothing to do with the patient at all,
Hmm.
and it's just purely based on what we're willing to compensate, and it's really all about the money and has nothing to do with the patient or their health or their goals. So, and it's interesting that you've seen that so early on, because I take it you mentioned you only worked or you worked in or witnessed this, seen this in other practices, but you haven't been in practice very long yourself. So you picked up on this like right away. Did you see that this was a problem before you graduated and became a doctor, or did this kind of happen immediately after?
It happened immediately after. Um,
Okay.
Yeah, and and not to get too into the business side, 'cause I know we're going to talk about that in a little bit,
Sure.
but I think that the reason that I started doing this too was that whole insurance can dictate what I can do thing
Uh-huh.
that you're talking about.
Right.
And for me, it's like the body works systemically. You can one thing that is really powerful for, where I was coming from with this is that the fascial system, that fascial network that covers the muscles and surrounds the tissues and the organs of the body, they did this really cool research. I think the guy's name is Jean-Claude Guillembertu, and he was a surgeon in France, I believe. And the YouTube article, or I think it's called Strolling Under the Skin, and I think it's on YouTube. You can find it. But essentially, the research that what they were doing was they were taking, embalmed bodies. There was a specific embalming technique that they did, and they were able to put an endoscope, like a camera that goes under the skin, up in the shoulder, right? And then what
Hmm.
they did was in the cadaver's body, they were watching the fascia up here, and they wiggled the opposite side big toe. So if this is my right shoulder here, they wiggled the left big toe, and they were able to see the fascia moving up in the shoulder. And so, like, for me,
Wow.
I'm thinking, like, how can I just treat a knee complaint when we know that the biomechanics of the knee are being impacted by the hip and the ankle, like the joints above and below? Like, how can we just treat one area of the body without looking at how everything is working together? And then how can we look at somebody who's struggling with like an overhead press and not look at what's happening at the ankle, the foot, the hip, all of these things, because we have to transmit force through the body in order to make that happen. So I was like, well, when people ask me like why I don't take insurance, it's like, well, I mean, do you want me to look at all this stuff, or do you want me to just treat the area of complaint and then not actually make it better? Because I've had so many people where it's like I have back pain, hip pain, things like that, and I look at an old ankle injury and I'm like, have you sprained this ankle? And they're like, yeah, a bunch of times. And I'm like, and then I start to explain the biomechanics here, right?
Mm.
The proprioceptive mechanisms that's in the brain. It's like it's the calibration. So it's like if that foot is responding to the ground reactive forces coming up through the body, and it's like not calibrated correctly, well, the muscles aren't going to work properly going up that chain, right? So that's how an old ankle injury can essentially create all of this dysfunction going up, and it's like it's hidden because people aren't looking at it. And I've had
Right.
patients where 6 months, 8 months, years in physical therapy, and I ask them, and I'm like, has anybody ever looked at this and explained this to you? And they're like, no, never. I'm like, okay, well, I think that we have our answer here. And that really speaks
Wow.
to people. They're like, okay, cool. Like this person is actually doing the work. He's actually understanding the body. So, or at least I hope so. But I try to explain everything very simply to people because once we
Right.
can explain it simply, we know it deeply. I think that's a Richard Feynman quote. But
Yeah, I've
yeah,
heard that expressed a few different ways, and it's true, right? If you can explain it simply, it means you really understand it, and that's why I can never explain anything simply because sometimes I don't understand, right?
me too. It took me a while to get to the point where I can like there was years where people would just eyes glaze over and I'm like, I gotta figure that out better
You
because I
start
just lost
speaking
them.
Latin to them and throwing out like
Yes.
huge, complex words, and they just yeah, exactly. Eyes
Yeah.
glaze over. Yep.
But also
Because
sometimes
believe it
I
or
feel
not,
like, mhm,
it's kind of a paradox because on one hand patients want you to do all of these things and to be this expert, but on the other hand they might say they want to be educated, but when you start educating them, the truth comes out, right? They just lose interest because suddenly there's this nerd talking to them. They've got an appointment to be at, they've got a coffee date with someone, they've got things to do, and you're just
mhm,
going on, right? It's like they want you to be straightforward and to the point.
mhm,
They really want you to spend less time with them, not more. At the end of the day, right? There is a
mhm.
balance I believe that can be struck between getting someone in and out quickly and providing them value. Somewhere there's a sweet spot between the two. So great
Yeah, I do
stuff.
agree.
So tell me, how did you become the doctor for the U.S. squash team?
Yeah. Um, in one word, serendipity. But the full story is I've been working with Amanda Sobey, she's currently world ranked 5, I think. But she's been the number one on the US team for quite some time. And yeah, so she actually reached out to me through Instagram and we got connected there. And I was actually working at another place at that time. And,
Mm.
I just started working with her and starting to do all of these things that I do. And, she was seeing the value of like the medicine that I was giving and, the explanations and also like how she can work on this on her own because she'd fly in from like Egypt and I'd have to do like a 2 hour long treatment on her and then she'd fly out to three other countries to play tournaments and then come back like 2, 3 months later. So it wasn't like I had the luxury of treating her like consecutively,
Right.
which is again, I think the typical kind of model. So it's like, how can essentially I create a massive amount of value in a short period of time so that she can go out and do what she does best? Um, so just building that relationship, and I found out that the U.S. squash team was based in Philly, and they just recently moved,
Yeah.
created this huge center right outside of Drexel's campus, and she was telling me that they don't have a physio, they don't have like somebody that comes in and works on the athletes and all that stuff, and I was like, well, do you want one? So I kind of just plugged it, and then I saw, a few of her family, her brother, her sister, who's also a squash player, and both of them are squash players, but Sabrina's also, ranked 15th in the world right now. And I saw one of the men's players, and I just keep chipping away at that and just be like, hey, if you guys need somebody, I'm more than happy to sit down and chat about it. So finally,
Totally.
in early August, I got the call from Bridget and Kim to, all right, dude, come down to the center. We'll have a chat. And yeah, so it's been an amazing relationship since then because you see when you start to work with these professional athletes from a very intimate perspective, like it's ingrained in the team dynamic. Now we're starting to actually make those deeper changes and say like, oh, like this is the thing that you guys are constantly struggling with. We can start to improve upon that, and there's tons that I can talk about with that, but
Oh,
that's the
no
gist of it.
doubt. Now, because not everyone is a pro athlete or an Olympic athlete,
Mhm.
but I'm sure that there's a benefit to working on these high performance individuals. Does any of
Mhm.
that translate to a weekend warrior like me?
Oh, 100%. The things that I've learned just by working with these ladies and gentlemen, it's helped immensely within my own practice too. Um, Perfect example. If you have a squash player who, or pro athlete who has a competition in like a day or two, they
Mm-hmm.
are very apprehensive about anything that you do that's going to be very intense, right? So I've had to learn to maybe not use so much of a neurofunctional acupuncture input, which is going to really reset the nervous system and start to create some big changes in the body. I shy away from that so that they're not sore or anything like that. And I actually just use a lot more, like I call it micro conditioning. It's a soft tissue technique mainly aimed at working the fascia and just doing the same thing where I'm muscle testing and then doing some input, doing some work, and then seeing the changes. So I'm able to still get very similar results, but we're actually able to do it in a different way. So it's got my brain thinking like, oh, okay, sweet. There's many different ways to get to Rome. Like the dream objective here is
Mm.
just prime the body, make sure that the performance is there from every single muscle of the body so that everything's working together so that injuries don't happen and you're going to perform at your best. So
I mean,
one
that's
example.
incredible. No, that's
Hmm.
a great example, and I love that. And as the more you educate me and teach me here, the more I realize this is why you have just soaked up as much as you could as fast as early as you could in your career as a doctor. I saw that in your practice you do even things like cupping.
Oh yeah.
You do. What is the proper name for electroacupuncture? Is that it, or do you have another name for that?
I have a post coming out about that too because
Okay,
like
because
there's a
people
lot
like
of
me
different
need.
names. At the
Yeah.
end of the day, the one that I've settled on personally is neurofunctional acupuncture,
Okay.
because it kind of describes what we're doing the best. But there's been a bunch of different terms thrown out, like sports medicine acupuncture, sports
Mm-hmm.
acupuncture, orthopedic acupuncture, medical acupuncture, all of these things. But at the end of the day, what are we actually doing? We're inserting needles into the body to create some kind of stimulus. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
be that improvement in circulation, neural flow, lymphatic drainage. All of these things is what acupuncture can do. Now,
Hmm.
what I'm specifically thinking about with like this neurofunctional approach is like, let's muscle test, let's see how the body's moving. If there is anything that's too tight or not working properly, we can put a needle in where the nerve meets the muscle. We call it the neuromuscular junction. And then we can input a little bit of an electric stimulus. And what that does is it activates through the nerve into the muscle a contraction. Okay. Now that contraction is creating this input that's going back up to the motor cortex of the brain and almost like saying, hey, this muscle exists. Why don't we use that? Or
Oh,
reset it,
okay.
like turn that down, right? So a lot of people have like upper trap tightness. You can actually, instead of like massaging that out for 10 minutes, you can do a quick 30-second, 1 minute like input with an acupuncture needle and a little electric stim to neurally just turn that muscle down. So
No
yeah,
kidding.
it's a powerful treatment and it works very quickly. But
Yeah.
the thing that I noticed was that you have to follow that up with movement because if people aren't accustomed to moving the way that they should, then we're going to get really great results very quickly, but it will fade away, right?
Right.
So it's that was the thing
Well,
that I needed to fix in practice.
yeah, and I think that's just giving the patient post care instructions. Hey, at home, be sure you do this movement. And is it? I'm not going to say that my experience is the same for everyone, but I know with getting say deep tissue massage work done, the
Hmm.
same thing happens. If I don't move afterwards, I pretty much
Hmm.
go back to right to there goes 90 minutes and I got to relax for 90 minutes, but the long term benefit didn't stick, right? Because I
Well,
went right back to what I was doing, which was sitting.
well, think about what's happening there, right? And this is the simplification that I like to give to people is like muscles are working as a team, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And have you ever been on a team or done a group project where somebody's doing a lot of the work and then like someone else is doing absolutely none of the work?
Yep.
Sucks,
Yeah.
right? But that's the case sometimes. And in the body, that's the same way, whereas we have dominant movement patterns that cause want certain muscles to work and overuse. And then other muscles are being underused. And those overused muscles tend to be the tight ones. And so when you go in with soft tissue and all these things, most of the treatments are targeted to release the tight stuff. But I've found that there's not many people that are doing the work to start to work on the things that aren't working properly, right? So when you go and get a deep tissue massage, you get all of that stuff released, but you're not addressing the stuff that's not working properly. So those tight muscles will just become tight because you haven't changed the way that you're moving your body, if that makes sense.
So I haven't really addressed the cause of why my muscles are tight. They're not tight because I'm old or anything like that, or I'm worn
Hmm.
out. It's just my lifestyle perhaps isn't. I'm not living my life the way I was designed to. Right.
Potentially. Yeah, and a lot of
Yeah.
people, and this is the thing too, is like no one gets this education early in their life. No one does. You know, like
Clearly, I haven't.
well,
Right.
I mean, if you were an athlete and you played on a high school sports team, something like that, and
Sure.
maybe you started getting introduced to strength and conditioning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your coach may have been like, okay, sweet, we're going to start doing strength and conditioning. Everybody's going to do some squats today. All right, we're going to do these programs, we're going to do squats, all these things. And like, no one's ever saying, like, hey, this is how you do a squat. Or maybe they say, like, all right, you want to, you know, I don't know what they say, like, just do some things like sit your hips back and make sure that the bar is going over and you're not leaning forward too much, like all that stuff, right? But no one's
Yeah.
actually breaking the movement down and saying, "Hey, you're not doing this properly because of this. All right, now I want you to work on this. Maybe we have to do some accessory work because your glutes aren't firing correctly when you're doing this squat." Right? And that's the
Ah.
thing. We start to create these little movement patterns in our body, and because we're athletes, we're going to accomplish the goal. That's just human nature. Like we're going to accomplish something because that's what we've done for millennia, right?
Yep.
But that may not be serving to us long term. So we're going to accomplish the short term objective, but maybe down the line, if we keep doing it 10,000 a million times, things are going to impact us. Like we're going to need that knee replacement down the line, or we're going to
Ah.
start developing pain, right? And so no one's addressing those little things that have been growing and snowballing
Sure.
over time. So,
Gotcha. Okay, so the one little issue after 10,000 reps over so many
mhm,
years eventually, for lack of better words, grinds away, and boom, now you need a knee replacement or whatever the problem might be. Even though
right,
you didn't feel it 10 years ago, but that's when the problem might have actually started. Huh.
right. And so you may have
Gotcha.
actually fed into that a lot because you're like, sweet, my squat's at 100 pounds today. And now I want to
Yep.
be at 400 pounds by the end of like 5 years. Now you're at 400
Right.
pounds, but your glutes still don't work, or whatever. I
Mm.
use glutes a lot because I treat a lot of that. Um, but you haven't addressed any of that, so you're getting stronger in all of the wrong areas, and the same weakness is still there. And maybe it's
Mm.
getting a little bit of improvement, but there's still not that balance. So it's going to cause your pelvis to be off, right? And it's not just like, hey, I can adjust that and send you on your way. It's like, hey, this is going on, but every single time you go and squat, this is the issue. So, you know, it's a little bit of a
So
deeper thing that I think that we have to address.
So this is the biomechanics of movement that I keep hearing about, but I keep hearing the word, but I'm still ignorant. It's like I know the title of the book without ever having opened it, and
Hmm.
I don't personally, and maybe it's out there and the algorithms just don't favor me, but I don't see any content online that kind of breaks this stuff down, right?
Hmm.
I don't care about another fitness influencer and yoga pants 2 sizes too small selling some kind of shake or supplement telling me how to do squats. That's not what I'm looking for. I want someone, like yourself, or do you know who Dr. Andrew Huberman is
Oh, I
as a neuroscientist?
love Huberman.
Yeah,
I
so
followed him like
someone
when he
like
was just getting started. He's the man.
oh, okay. Yeah, like nothing to sell. He just wants to make people healthier. That's
Right.
I have not found anyone like that, and maybe that's just because again the algorithms haven't showed them to me. Um, but I think that would be
Hmm.
valuable because again I'm a weekend warrior. I lift 2 or 3 times a week,
Yeah.
and I'm not trying to go compete in a strongman competition or anything, but I do see the value in proper mechanics, and I do try my best. But then again, it's me. My wife actually is more knowledgeable in lifting in proper form than I am, so I get some help from her and a mirror, and I hope for the best. And the only my litmus test is, am I jacked up for the next couple of days, or do I feel okay? Like that's
Mm.
all I have to go on, right? So I think there's a definitely for those of us who are interested, because not everyone is,
Hmm.
there's a gap. And could I seek out that knowledge? Sure. I just don't even know where to look or what to look for, or how to discern what's good information versus what's fluff, right? There's because the internet's full of that content for the
Ah,
sake of content. So, do you have any
it's
tips
so
on
true.
for? I mean, because obviously you paid for your education
Hmm.
and you got the good stuff. Is there a tip for the layman out there like myself to get some of this information from a reliable source?
Yeah. I mean, it is a really tough question. It's something that strikes very close to my heart because I see
Mm,
that gap every single day, just by going on, Instagram, social media. It's like you see all these people that are putting good information out there, but maybe like the deeper stuff isn't there too. And I think that there's a
sure.
few different variables, of course, right? Our attention spans are getting shorter. We want to just put some cool stuff out there. We want it to look good so that we get, likes and follows and things like that.
Yep.
We have to admit that. I think that I think that what I'm hearing from you too is that it would be very helpful if there was more long form content out there, maybe like Andrew Huberman stuff. But also, that takes a certain kind of person to actually go and watch that stuff.
It does.
I think I don't have any answers off the top of my head. It's like, hey, go follow these guys. But there are very
Yeah.
good doctors out there that are putting this stuff out. The problem is it may not be to the level of, I guess, simplification that we would really want because
Right.
a lot of things that I hear from my patients, it's like I don't want to have to go and do all that stuff. Like I don't want to have to go and learn biomechanics, 101 to like 401, to essentially learn how to be out of pain.
Yeah, they just want the high level knowledge that's actionable, even if they don't understand
Synthesize.
the science.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that I really want to do and put that out there. Um, and it's something that I feel like is starting to happen. Um,
Good.
my goal, essentially in business, is to create a hybrid model for people that can't, come in person and see me. Start to put out some like informational things where, you can work on biomechanics and things like that. Actually, one of the people that I really, really like is Andrew Dettelbach, I believe. He was the on the Move You uh, Instagram and social media platform for a little while. They split off, but he was the shirtless guy, and he created a program called Wealth that's really good. And I actually can send you more information about that too. But
Yeah.
I'm an affiliate with them, and I find that like I put my stamp of approval on the stuff that they're doing, especially just from a biomechanics approach of just breaking things down, and you're following a progression of like fix your pelvis, fix your breathing, get all of these joints in
Mm.
alignment, like start to understand. But that's the deeper work that has to happen. It's not like a snap, I just watched this video and everything's perfect, because it does take a lot of like undoing how we do things and then starting to
Sure.
build things back up. The great thing is when I have somebody who's injured, they're willing to do all that work. But I hardly ever, had said never until last week, I hardly ever have somebody that comes to me and says, "Hey, I just really want to optimize my movement. You know, think
Mm.
you can do that for me?" Right? Like, no, not many people do that because there's no pain involved, right? There's no like, I've hit rock bottom, I need to fix this stuff, right?
Yeah,
So,
totally.
yeah.
Yeah, people will move, just from a business, a marketing and sales uh, mindset. We have to realize that people move away from pain faster than they move towards pleasure or towards a
Yes.
benefit. So that's why so much of our advertising and marketing that we see, not in this industry but in all industries, tends to be pain or problem based.
Yep.
Not and then they explain the benefits, right? But it's all hinged around the pain point. And we even see that with our news. It's all sensationalized, negative. Something about our wiring, I didn't design our nervous system, but something about it responds with action to pain, not pleasure.
Hmm. Yes.
So there's a
Yep.
there's a big, big, big bias towards pain versus pleasure. So you're right.
Hmm.
It takes a special kind of disciplined person to do what they logically know they need to do, which is, hey, let me get ahead of this and optimize my movement. And I only know a very few people like that. Most
Right.
of us are all about reacting to the problem and dealing with the problem as presented, which, as professionals in our in our fields that want to help people with what we know, we just have to accept that. Like, okay, we have to see where you are and then do our best to perhaps make you a believer and then be more proactive. But it all starts with pain.
It's
It
it's
all
so
starts with
funny,
pain.
and I think that like people like you, people like I, like anyone that's kind of in this like entrepreneurial space too, and I'd love to talk
Mm-hmm.
about this in the second half too, but like those are the people that are like seeing how, and this is my experience, is like we see the mirror every single day. Like
Yeah.
essentially the fruits of our labor are essentially reflected back in success that we have in business and things like that. It's like we really need to optimize us as humans so that we can be the good leaders in the community. And
Yep.
yeah, I mean, like it's not how most people are. And I
No.
think that it's deep down in everybody to want to have, the best for themselves too. But there's times when I feel like a lot of my job is to draw that out of people, and just be like, hey, if this is your goal, if this is what you want, then these are the steps that are going to have to be taken. Are you
Sure.
willing to do that? Yes or no? If no, then like, well, maybe we're not the best fit, and I have somebody down the road that can essentially just, give you the short-term result that you're looking for. But when you do notice that it comes back, then we can actually do the work. you know.
Did you ever do
Um,
sales in college or any sort of sales job before you became a doctor?
no, but I have read a lot of books on this topic
Okay.
now, and I've essentially kind of I had a boss who, gave me a lot of information on that, got me starting to think about it, and
Hmm.
I think that a lot of, I guess, well, so the short answer is no, and I'm sure you have somewhere you're going with
Okay.
that, so I'll
Yeah,
let you
well, I
go.
was just going to say that the reason I ask is you said you had to draw out someone's vision for themselves, and when I'm as business owners, we sell all the time, whether we're selling
Hmm.
to clientele, whether we're selling to our staff, selling an idea, we're always selling something, and so
Hmm.
often it is drawing out, okay, you have this problem you want to fix. What is it going to do for you if we fix this problem? What's your
Hmm.
what benefit are you going? How is it going to change your life? How is it going to improve? How are you going to get closer to your goals? What does that do for you?
Right.
Why do you want this?
Hmm.
And it's like so much work to get it out, but once you get it out, that's the anchor point. And then you say, well, if you want X, you're going to have to do Y, and if you're not willing to do that, we're not the right fit. And I guess we're talking about business now, so we'll just roll with
Hmm.
it. But you don't want to fill your business, your practice, and this is not just you. This is me. This is everyone who owns a company. You don't
Hmm.
want to fill it with the wrong customer, right? It's someone who
Right.
doesn't get with the program, someone who doesn't share your values. You don't. The worst thing that could happen, and it's happened to me, so I speak from experience here. This is not
Mm.
theory. The worst thing that can happen is you wake up one day and you realize you don't like your business, you don't like the people you help, you don't like the people that work for you, you don't like anything
Hmm.
about what you've built, and you just want out.
Mm.
Right? Like that's a
Yeah.
horrible feeling. It's a horrible. It brought me to tears 3 or 4 times. It'll bring you to tears,
Oh,
and you
wow.
just want to quit. Um, and I think a lot of it began with just saying yes to money rather than knowing when it's better to maybe refer someone out to a different direction, or if they don't want to listen, you just don't work with them, right? And that's hard to do from from a startup perspective, where in the beginning you just have to make ends meet. But
Hmm.
over time, if you don't get out of that, you have to do that for a time, but there becomes a time where you can no longer do that if you want to build what you want to build. Am I making sense?
You are making tons of sense. And
Okay,
I
cool.
have like my brain is going in 15 different directions because I'm like, yep, learn that. Yep, understand that. Yeah. And
Good.
I'm going through a lot of like, personal changes with that too because it's like I guess my life I've I've had to come to this like realization of like I like to bite off way more than I can chew. As you can tell from
Yep.
like how I went through school, like, taking two master's degrees and a chiropractic degree all at once and still going and
Goodness.
shadowing people like
And you just
it's kind
turned
of crazy
30
and
and
it's
you've
like
done all this.
I guess, people think that I've like made it and I'm like, no, I haven't made it at all. Like I still
No,
feel
of
like
course
I'm,
not.
just treading water, right? And like I I bite off more than I can chew almost to put myself in the pressure cooker.
Hmm.
I want to see if the stuff that I've learned when I'm in that environment and I'm in that pressure cooker, the crucible, if you will, if I'm ready, you know? And the thing that I'm noticing right now with business is that I don't know a lot. And I've had to really learn in a short amount of time how to run this because one of my core values for this is to create a culture where doctors are being paid what they're worth because I've experienced where it's like I'm not getting paid what I'm worth, therefore I show up and I'm burnt out and I'm not
Yep.
going to give the best to people, my clients and all that stuff, which I think that they deserve the best, right?
Absolutely.
So like I want to create this culture where it's like, all right, we're paying everybody really well. All of the profits that we're getting from, patients, clients, all of that stuff is getting reinvested so that these people are getting more and more benefit. This is like where I want to go with the hybrid model so that, people who maybe can't afford what I do is there's a lower tier where it's like, hey, we're going to kind of do this with you, um, not so much for you, essentially. Um,
Right.
and I've had to
So,
come to the terms of like, my personal, I guess, health and all that stuff is like work, 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 work. Like I have to set boundaries, you know? So it's like all of these things that you're talking about, I'm like, ah, boom. Yeah, I've experienced it.
Yeah,
So,
totally. And it's
hmm
best to make all your mistakes now and not later. You will always make mistakes. That will never stop.
hmm
But the sooner you make them and learn from them, the better off you are typically. And
yeah.
you mentioned something. You realize you realize something about business, and that's that you know nothing. I,
Mm.
I'll tell you, there's some kind of, I don't know if it's a curve or a pattern. People who don't know jack think they know everything about the subject, and it's not until you start learning some more about the subject that you realize you don't know anything about it. I think
The
that's the
Dunning-Kruger
Dunning-Kruger,
effect.
yeah, the Dunning-Kruger
Yes.
effect. So, people who feel like they don't know anything, which, I mean, I've been in the marketing space for 13 years,
hmm
and I feel like I know nothing. But it's like, well, wait a minute, I know more than most people have ever forgotten. I've forgotten more than most people ever learn. But it still feels like someone says, well, how do I get more customers? I'm like, how do I answer that question? Because
It
it just
depends.
it depends, right? It's like, I don't know. I have to ask you questions, and then people's eyes glaze over. So, but the point being is when you feel like you know nothing,
hmm
you know something. You just realize there's so much more you don't know, and that's a good thing, because now perhaps you're identifying what your known unknowns are. Because prior they were
Yes.
unknown unknowns, and that's what allowed you to
hmm
have somewhat of an ego. And once you realize there's so many known unknowns, you're like, oh crap, I don't know anything. I better learn.
Yeah.
I better get after it. I better do something
And
about that.
that's why, like, I've run this mentorship group with a lot of really young doctors, great people, great
Mm-hmm.
doctors, really wants the best for their patients in the world, really. But they're like, how have you gotten to where you are? And I'm like, gotten to where I am. Like, there's so much more to do. There's so much more to like give. And I'm really blessed to have the opportunities that I do at this point in my life. And, I really just want to
For
leverage
sure.
that to essentially do what I really want to do, which is scale good medicine.
Yep.
So, yeah. And you
Yeah.
said something before I wanted to touch on.
Yeah.
How we deal with failure. And I think this is really a beautiful thing. When I was in Egypt and I was working with the women's team, it was for the world championships, women's world teams. And, we got second, which is amazing. Um, so awesome to be in the company of just such amazing, incredible athletes. But we were riding the bus
That's
back and forth
wild.
from the center, and I just get a chance to like talk to these people like they're humans because everybody's human. Some
Yeah.
some people are just doing really cool things with their lives, and so I was talking to one of our players, Olivia Klein. Shout out if she ever hears this, but um, I asked her like, how do you approach like a failure in a match? Like you lose, like what's happening there? Because it's such a heady sport. It's like individualized. You're out there for like a solid hour in the pressure cooker of this match, and you lose, right? Like what happens, And she was like, I used to be very hard on myself. She used to, essentially be like, I lost that match. I'm always losing matches. Like therefore, I'm always a loser. Like these very negative talks and I essentially was just like, yeah. And she formatted that. She shifted. She went through this whole personal, journey, shifted all of these things. And now she's just like, I use that as kind of like a lesson. I use that and it's not that I'm always a failure. It's just that like in this moment, there was other things that I needed to work on. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like that is how I'm doing my best to approach business, where it's like, I'm always going to lose, I'm always going to make mistakes. And it's like, there's people who are perfectionists and just want to avoid that. And that used to be me, or it still is, I guess, to an extent.
Me
But
too.
can we take that mistake and be like, oh, thank you for that lesson. Here's the things that I need to do and learn from. Because the fact of the matter is we're always going to lose. We're always going to make mistakes. It's our relationship with that that's going to be what defines us as a business owner, a doctor,
Yeah.
an athlete, all of these things that I think that is a common theme, like a common thread that holds together so many people in the life that we live. So yeah, I just wanted to share that. I thought it was like relevant. So
That's so relevant, and so relevant because all of us struggle to deal with failure in a healthy way, like the way you just prescribed. I, among all the entrepreneurs in this country, I have screwed the pooch when it comes to failure more times than I can count. I don't know. It would be impossible to know just how much further ahead I would have been if at 20 years old I had known how to deal with failure, rather than letting failure build limiting belief after limiting belief in my mind that held me back. Because the way I always saw it was, oh yeah, guys like Colonel Sanders and Elon Musk, yeah, they can fail and fail and fail, but it's always going to work out for them because they're smarter than me. I'm not that smart. It's not going to work for me. Of course they knew what was going to happen. Like, they just knew if they just stuck through it one more time, it would eventually work. I don't know it's going to work. So I'm just not cut out for this. I'm not smart enough for this. I'm not hard working enough for this. I need too much sleep to be able to do this, whatever. And it just would always hold me back. And it's just like, 10 years really of just dealing with that with an unhealthy way of handling failure. And the great news is, it's not that it's like, well, it's too late. It's never too late. But I've been on both sides of the fence. I'm not coming from a position where I was always this go-getter that wasn't afraid to fail. And I'm just saying, hey guys, come on. It's fine. I've been there and I've walked that road. More than I haven't, actually. So I know what it's like. And it's comforting to fail, and be upset about it, but then just be like, well, that's just what I am. It's just all I can do. It's all I've got in me. And it's really not. There's really not much difference between people who are successful versus those who aren't. And successful people largely have the same problems, maybe even more than many of us, right? And yet the only difference is their tenacity in dealing with failures. There's I forgot the guy's name. Napoleon Hill wrote about him in Think and Grow Rich. This gentleman became Thomas Edison's assistant. Oh. He train hopped and scrapped and bummed his way to Edison's lab, wherever that was. Was it in Philly, actually?
I think it was in New Jersey.
New Jersey? Somewhere New England.
Somewhere close by, though. Yeah.
Yeah. So he came from like the Midwest, Illinois, or somewhere in that area. Came all the way over just to apprentice. And Edison never knew this guy. Not once did he know this guy. Ever met him, never heard his name. And this guy just showed up at his doorstep and basically demanded a job, said, I'm not leaving till I get one. And he worked like 4 years or 3 years without even so much as a nod from Edison, doing like the most lowly work until eventually his big break came. And he essentially was selling I think, was it typewriters? Or no, it was a voice dictation machine. It was a recorder. I don't know if it was like the wax cylinders with the needle, predecessors to vinyl or not. I don't know if that's what it was, but it was something about a voice dictation machine so you could record your voice and play it back. And mind you, this was in Edison's day. It's a long time ago. It was no one believed in it but Edison and this guy who was like mopping floors and doing all the grunt work. And he said, well, I can go sell that. So Edison let him do it, and he made it a huge success. And he eventually, his goal was, he set out to become Edison's partner. He said, I am going to be Edison's business partner. When this guy had no money, he was half a country away, he said, I'm going to be Edison's business partner. There's no way around it. It's going to happen. And he walked that tunnel for like 4 years without ever seeing the light at the end of it. But he always believed one day Edison would see what he's got, and I would be his partner. It was an interesting story, but we always believe, and I say we because it's me. Well, he knew, right? That he was going to work out for him. Like, of course it was. He's hardworking, he's smart, he's got the juice, he's got the mojo. I can't be that sure of anything. And of course this could all just be me. maybe there isn't another entrepreneur out there who'll ever listen to this and think, oh, okay, well, I don't struggle with that. But what I've realized is like there's nothing special about any of these people at all, except for the decisions they made and the choice they made to stay to those decisions. And that's in business. I think that's really the key to handling failure, is just realizing that no matter what, if you keep doing all the right things, eventually you'll get what you're looking for. And failure is just going to be part of the process, but not really the outcome. Does that make sense?
100%.
That's what I've learned, and I try to believe it. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
Some days I do better than others, but sorry, go ahead. I'm taking the microphone here.
Please feel free to. You have a lot of insight on this, and my thoughts. There's two things. One, I think that it's very easy for us to read these stories of successful people and be like, oh, they had all that stuff, because we see the outcome, but we don't see the in the middle, right? Like if you went and talked to that person in like year 2 of that, he'd be like, man, I'm pretty depressed. Like this kind of sucks. And I don't even know if like this guy even notices who I am, let alone knows my name. Right. So it's like, that's the stuff that I think that people don't see, and it's easy to kind of tell the story once you've done that work. And it's something that like Alex Hormozy talks about. He's like, if you're going to go and put your stamp of stuff on social media, it's like, you better be doing the work, because who are you if you're just saying things that other people have said before, just in your own words. Right.
Yeah.
So I resonate with that. And then the other thing too is like, I remember filling out this scholarship form like way back in the day, and they asked me, what has been your greatest success? And I'll never forget my answer, because I was like, I didn't win it, and I was like, man, I love that answer because I carry it with me. My greatest success have been all my failures, because I've learned from those. You don't learn from successes sometimes, and you will from all of the things that have essentially defined you through, I guess, that crucible that we were talking about before. It's like those are the things that really mold a person. It's like how we relate to that. Do we give up? That used to be my problem. I would just, everything when things get hard, and it's still there, right? Like this is the deeper traumas that we have with our lives, and it's like, do you just fall back on that limiting belief, or do you kind of push through that? And I think that's why I like Andrew Huberman so much, because it's like mindset, people like Wim Hof, mindset, it's like you can really accomplish a lot just by creating the good environment mentally,
Right.
It's crazy what you can accomplish when you have that kind of, I guess, goal setting is what you were talking about with that guy too. It's like, he's got this long-term goal that he's always working for. And he knows that like, if he can just stay true to the path, that will happen, and it's amazing when you start to hear these stories about people who really just set their mind to things and what they can accomplish from that. So I very much resonate with that story.
And you've covered a lot, and that's one. I want to mention one thing you covered, and then we can move forward. Actually doing what you're saying. If you're going to put it out on social media, actually be about the doing. I had to make a decision, when I decided, okay, well, I'm going to build a personal brand. And for reasons I think I've covered in other podcasts, so I won't cover it here as to why I've decided to do podcasts. I'll give you the short version. For the last 13 years, my favorite interactions with my customers have always been these private, like 1 hour long conversations about just business and whatever. And I realized after some soul searching, I should just do a podcast and just encapsulate that and make it as part of my, make it part of my success and my vision. So I had to decide, well, I can't just regurgitate anything. I don't want to be just some empty content curator that is a glorified news reporter who's just a face and a voice, but has nothing of value or nothing new to add. And I think that's so important. And I noticed that when I was looking at your content, like this is new stuff. You're actually making novel content. I'm not from the perspective of, you're not some sort of researcher who's sharing new things, but what you're doing is taking what you've learned behind closed doors and through experience with patients and actually sharing that with everyone who wants to listen. And I said, that's the stuff. That's the juice. That right there is what is valuable, because, gosh, we don't want to see, the same thing over and over and over again. We just don't. And I don't think there's any value in that. Okay. There was one thing.
Well, thank you for sharing. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah.
Amazing.
My pleasure. Absolutely. Let's see here. Oh, so we talked about empowering your patients. We talked about neurofunctional acupuncture. We talked about challenging America's healthcare system. We've talked about the U.S. squash team and your trip and your time in Egypt and just being around these amazing athletes and what you've learned from them. We've talked about failure. We've talked about your mentor, Dr. Dan Dominguez. Is there anything else you want to cover in the... I know we've jumped around between health and business. Is there anything that you want to cover in health and well-being before we move on?
I think one of the most important things for patients or anybody who is looking to optimize their health or, live their best life, you have to be accountable for yourself. And this is the problem that we have, is that we put a lot of trust in doctors, but at the same time, like, if those people aren't giving you the results that you're looking for, you can't feel bad about jumping ship and finding somebody else. I think that, yes, once we find somebody that we like, we should stick with them, but always, be critical of their processes. And, like I always tell my patients, like, I want you to hold me accountable. If I'm not getting you the results that you want, like, let's talk about it and see if there's a different way that we can approach it, or I can send you to somebody that can help you, because at the end of the day, who are we hurting if we're not? And it's not going to be me, it's going to be the person that's in front of me who's essentially like told me the story of, like, I've been in physical therapy for 3 years and I haven't gotten any results. It's like, I'm like, damn, like, how does that feel? Like, I had my own back injury. Like, I blew my L5S1 disc when I was in 2019 lifting, right? And like, that experience taught me so much because I had to go through the process myself, and so I always tell people, like, I've been there, I've been where you are, and it takes work. If you want to essentially get back to the things that you want to do, it's like, it takes work, but it's not impossible. And I don't think that it's impossible for anybody who's been in chronic pain for years. It's like, it will get better. It's just a matter of, like, this is the gift of injury, like, this is the lessons that it's trying to teach you. And if we can let that be our teacher, we can learn so much from that and become a better version of ourselves. And it's like, you have two paths in the woods. We can either just kind of go down the path that we've always been going down, or we can take a different one and actually start to accomplish the things that we want in life. So, being accountable for yourself, and I guess being an advocate is what I'm really trying to get at, is like, essentially finding the good people and making sure that you're doing your homework, because it's your body that's going to be at stake here. So, and there's what we've been talking about too, is there's, like, lots of different kinds of doctors out there. There's some people that are succumbing to, the organized healthcare system in our country that may not be the best, right? There's a lot of work that we can do there. But there's also people that really do care, and those are the people that you really want to seek out. So yeah, that's what I would say. That's
awesome.
Final note.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you.
I love the being accountable to yourself. That's one of the hardest things for me to do. I'm one of the least accountable people. If I'm going to say it so no one else says it. I'm one of the most unaccountable people there are. And it's I have to work very hard to be accountable. And you're right. You don't have to feel worse as you get older. In fact, I feel better as I get older, because I said, I'm going to be more active. I'm going to lift. I'm going to get strong. And, I'm going to watch what I put in my body. Like, I'm not out here, like, eating super clean or anything like that. Don't get me wrong. I'm still enjoying my Taco Bell, but I'm not, loading myself up with sugar and excessive amounts of calories and not working them off. And surely I'm seeing, I went from 215 pounds. I'm 6'1", so 215 is not terrible. But, I went from 215 arguably not the greatest shape in my life either. It wasn't like I was no iron marshmallow. Um, and then just through working more physically and just honestly, I just stayed so busy. I didn't even eat that much. Like I don't have a diet. I just stayed so busy. I didn't stop to eat really. And except in the evenings where I'd have my meal. And then, over the course of a summer, not doing anything special, I went from 215 to 180 and actually got stronger, while doing it. And I got, out of back pain. I've got, I used to complain my knees used to hurt all the time from activity. I can't remember the last time my knees have ached. Right? I can't really remember the last time I woke up with a crick in my neck or a sore back or really anything other than maybe muscle soreness from putting out, but nothing that just seemed like this is what it's like to be an adult, right? How often do we hear that? Oh, just wait till you hit 30. You're going to really start feeling it. Right? And it's like, well, I've arrived.
Someone who just turned 30.
Right? Like I've arrived and I feel better at 30 than I did at 26, 25.
Bingo.
So it's really, you don't have to decline. It's not a one-way road. So great. So as a business owner, right? You started Podium Performance. There's so much I want to talk about. Just tell us where's your business right now? In terms of, I know you have, it's not just you. You're not the only doctor on staff. You actually have a doctor of physical therapy as well on staff and some CAs. So you're not a small shop. You're bigger than some people have been around 20 years. Tell us how many years have you been in practice or have you been open?
We opened up in July of last year.
July of 22?
Yeah.
Wow. So you're not even open a year.
No, yeah, not at all.
So it's like you really haven't even had time for like patients to go inactive and like sit on a list somewhere for years. How many patients does the practice have?
Well,
roughly,
probably
ballpark.
like around like 200 plus, I'd say right now. It's a process, and I wouldn't
It's
say
hard
that
work.
like on the outside it looks like I'm doing a lot, but it's like kind of just this is the vision that I have, so I'm kind of checking little boxes off as I go. But like the thing is, we definitely offer more of a premium service. Like it's not cheap by any means.
Right.
What we're doing because we're trying to solve a problem that it's very it's been around it for quite some time, and so that does come at a premium. I think because of I don't want to say because of my knowledge, but like because of what I want to do with people is like I charge more money, right? And so I believe I'm the most expensive acupuncturist in Philly, and I definitely know I'm the most expensive chiropractor in Philly. I haven't done a lot of that research, but like from the market research that I was doing when I was opening up the practice, I had to take this gut check of being like, I'm charging a lot of money, like holy shit,
Yeah.
So.
Well, let's not discount that and just say we're the most expensive. Let's be very clear.
Offer
You're
the
not
most
the most
value.
expensive for the sake of being expensive. You realize
Yes.
that to provide the outcomes that you want to give your patients, you have to do so many things, and to do those things and to keep the lights on, you have to charge a certain fee schedule. Like you're not expensive just because you want to make a lot of money. It's not why you got into this. Right?
Right.
Like you don't appear or carry yourself as someone who's overly concerned about the finances. So I just want to make that very clear for anyone who comes across this. Is like, well, I'm not going to see this doctor. He just said he's super expensive. It's like, no, you provide a different result.
Exactly right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
So since what's the math on that? Like 8 months ago, something like that.
Yeah, just about.
200 patients. They're coming to you for a premium service, really a premium outcome. The service is just the vehicle. The outcome is what they're buying. And these patients, I know your goal is to see them, treat them, get them well, empower them, and move them on so they don't have to come see you as often. And how have you been when you started out in July? How did you get like your first 20 patients? Where did they come from?
Well, so I partnered with a CrossFit gym. So I guess, here's kind of how I started. Like,
Yeah.
I recognized that I wanted to leave the practice that I was at. I think that I was noticing that we were just slapping really good band-aids on it. I was working with a neurofunctional acupuncturist in the city, and there's not a lot of
Okay.
us, so we were able to do really good work. Um, but I just saw that movement component, and I was like, man, like I'm seeing some people that just keep coming back, and there's no plan. And I was like, that has to change. So wanted to create my own thing, and um, ended up meeting a business owner who runs a CrossFit gym, and he also has an Olympic lifting studio in the space as well. It's a beautiful gym. Micah is a fantastic, partner in what we're doing, and he had some rental space. He essentially had like 2-3 rooms for available, and we essentially negotiated the lease as like a percentage of the gross, so that I could essentially grow with
Wow.
the practice, right? So kind of growing into it. So it's like really low overhead at first, but then as I grow, then, that's when things are coming. And it's like the way I wanted to kind of make that was like leveraging that relationship where, he's making more money as the more successful I got. So creating somebody that's also invested in what I'm doing is is kind of like that opportunity that I wanted. Because
Yeah.
he's the owner of the gym. He's great at talking to people. He's going to be essentially my biggest advocate. So that was a huge initial, boon. There was some people that followed me from the place I was at before,
Okay.
um, but then also just doing some stuff for Requisite, and just getting people in through the door, and seeing how that relationship, matriculated, and that was like probably the second half of the people that I was seeing. Then I would say I got very lucky, and in August I started working with the U.S. squash team, and so I was having some of the professional athletes through the door, but then also, starting to, you know, as that relationship matured, starting to get my name out there in terms of some other surrounding communities and things like that. So lots of referrals, I would say, is the huge thing. And and then, like, so that was the first part, like creating that initial relationship with Requisite was probably the biggest way that I got some patients through the door. Then just doing really, really, really good work and focusing on that so that then I can build referrals. Once people
Yeah.
start talking about things, like that's the biggest thing. Then taking that squash relationship and starting to leverage that, becoming kind of an expert in the community online, like then people are like, oh, okay, well, that's why he's, you know, offering, great service because he's got that tier of like, okay, well, he's got expertise. He's working with the Team USA, like all these professional athletes. Um,
Totally.
and then from there, also, I've had a few really fortunate encounters and relationships being built through um, other providers. So one of my, amazing referral partners is Kelly, Dr. Kelly, and she is a regenerative orthopedic specialist here, where she does like PRP injections, prolotherapy, and things like that. And that
Okay.
relationship started blossoming, and she sends me quite a few people because her son's a squash player. I like work with him, like all that stuff. And
That's
yeah,
awesome.
so and it's crazy. Like I never thought that I would be the squash guy, right? Like, but these things just happen. You just have these patients, and it's like you start to just learn, and then from
So
there.
it seems like you I'm suspicious of the amount of luck you seem to have.
Hmm.
What are your activities? What are you doing to be in the right place at the right time? I know you're not predicting it, but what are you networking? Are you lunch and learning? Like where are you going to build these relationships and to find these people? Because they're not coming to you in the CrossFit gym, not all of them.
Oh, great question. So I'll say this from like my prelude is like, first of all, Naval Ravikant, I believe it was Naval who said that, I don't want to depend on luck, essentially because I want to depend on like the habits and the disciplines that are essentially going to
Sure.
be way better than luck because in 100 lifetimes I want to be successful and I don't want to depend on that to be like the reason for success. And I think that's really important. Um, so always with that caveat. And then the second thing, um, oh, I may forget this. Mm, I forget. I'm sorry.
That's
How
okay.
my brain works. But
A million directions at once, and then it gets pulled apart.
that's definitely how it goes. Um, but essentially, you know, I wanted to I wanted to put myself in like, where all of the people that are going. Oh, the second thing that is, I know exactly where I was going with this. I listened
All
to
right.
Founders podcast and
Mhm.
he was looking at like the life of Steve Jobs, and something that really resonated with me that I took from this was Steve would like essentially just reach out to all these people and not care, like not just like not have an ego of like if they say no or all this stuff. And it's something that I had to get over in my life, but also, it's very easy for me to just reach out to people online, or or in any of those capacities, and just be like, hey, like this is what I'm doing, like it would be really cool, I love what you're doing. Maybe we can kind of, sit down and grab some coffee and start to develop a relationship. So I'm like, I wouldn't say spamming people, but like any anytime that I feel like there's going to be some kind of really cool thing that we can create, and creating like a win-win-win relationship with other
Yep.
business owners and things like that, I never think twice about like reaching out to somebody. Now,
That's awesome.
where I am with like business and personal and all this stuff is that sometimes I reach out and then I'm like, well, I actually don't have time to do all this stuff, and that's where I get into hot water. But I will say that like understanding that and trying to use that and just to build a bunch of connections is going to be the biggest thing that we can possibly do in a young business's life. And I think that honestly, it's community that's going to solve a lot of problems anyway. Like in the whole
Yeah.
like patient perspective thing, is like, well, you're not just coming to me because of, what I know, right? You're coming to me for also the network that I've developed too, so you
Mm.
come to me and you have something that I can't fix, but I know somebody that can actually fix that. That's what you're also paying for, right? So you're not
I
just coming
see.
to me for Podium. It's like you're coming to me for the team that Podium has around us, because it's not about just like trying to keep that patient. It's like, let's actually get this patient better. So
I love that.
I
I
think
love
some of
that.
those things like shine through in how I do things. And of course, I'm learning along the way with all of these things, but it's
I
really
mean,
like how
you're
you can
doing some
smell good along the
things.
way.
You're doing some things that are absolutely awesome. I
I appreciate it.
have
You
yet
too.
to figure out. Thanks, man. I've
Yeah.
yet to figure out how to convince some of the, I hate to use the word older, but more established doctors who are in the middle of their careers to do these sort of
Mm,
things. I don't
mm,
know if maybe they feel like, oh, that grunt work. Like I've been doing this 20 years. That's new doctor stuff. Yeah,
hmm
I'm sitting around twiddling my thumbs for half the day because I don't have patience. But that stuff's for doctors who are younger and more energy or something. I don't know. I don't know what their excuse is. I've never been able to get that out of them.
hmm
But I'm going to put a big star next to this
mm,
because directly reaching out, what you're doing is what is called building strategic partnerships,
hmm
right? You are strategically building partnerships and saying, look, I think that you can give my patients value, and I think I can give your patients value. I think we can create a triple win situation. Do you want to have coffee? Do you want to have lunch? Whatever. And the power of this cannot be understated. And I'll offer an anecdote. I had a client many
hmm
years ago who's a chiropractor. He worked out of a very small, like 160 square foot office. He had a
hmm
part time CA,
Wow.
and he got to the point where he built his entire practice was based on auto accidents and personal injury. And what
Mm,
he did is he built strategic relationships with all the right people. He went to all the attorneys and insurance and agents and all these guys, bought them lunch, sent them wine and cheese baskets, and really buttered them up. And now he gets paid handsomely to do the work he wants to do. He works when he wants. The point is, he built what he wanted from strategic partnerships. That's the point. And the power of strategic partnerships cannot be understated. But if we're being honest, is it work? Is it hard work to do this?
Tons. And the
Yeah.
thing is too, it's like it's so funny because you gave it the name to what I've been doing, and it's like I don't know, I don't know what I'm doing. It's just that,
Right.
well, I just figured that that would be the best way to get your name out there also, and
Yeah.
so I find out that there's like labels and names to the stuff that I've been doing, and maybe I don't do it the best way possible, so that's the thing that I'm learning. But yeah, it's very hard work, and especially if you don't have a foundation, and this is the thing that
Yeah.
I've been really working on is, okay, I've been doing this, and I've been noticing like, oh, sweet, I go and meet this person, and sweet, we get coffee, but maybe we don't talk about all this stuff. We leave with like a hardcore um, path forward, right? And I found that
Right.
some of those relationships kind of just nothing really happens with them, even though I have all the best intentions. So
We'll
I'm
see.
starting to
You
learn
haven't
that
been around but a year. So,
that's true,
you never
right?
know.
You know, and I've found that too, like now that I've been building stuff too, like other people have been like they'll come back around and they'll be like, like I think that was a good idea. Like let's do something. But
Yeah,
yeah, I think
especially as
that
you
it's
become more active on social media and
hmm
you're building a presence and
hmm
then you're something to be noticed. The guy's like, hey, wait a minute. I remember talking to this doctor. Oh,
hmm
no, he is legitimate, right? He really is doing something.
yeah,
Now I'm interested again. Or, oh, crap. I meant to call him back and I got busy, right? It happens all the time.
exactly. Exactly.
So
And
you're,
I think that for me, like not having an ego with that too is like it's very important because it's like, oh, that person just ignored me. It's like, nah, that person was probably busy, like I'm busy with people. So
for sure.
um and it's very hard work. It's a lot of, again, the failure component. Like you have to be used to getting no said to you a lot. And I think that that's been the hardest thing for me because like my next step, my quarter one objective is go out there and just build relationships with primary care physicians, like MDs. You know, um,
Really?
yes, because one thing I recognize is I'll say this, and then I have something else that might help a lot of your viewers. Medical doctors, emergency care. One of my greatest friends in from high school, he is a resident at Cincinnati right now. He's an emergency medicine resident, and he's like, people come in with pain, and he's like, I don't know what to do. I have nothing, right? I deal more the internal stuff that's like super dangerous, right? But you come to me with
Yeah.
like pain, physical pain, he's like, it's not my forte. And he's one of the smartest people I know, which tells me I'm like, most medical doctors don't know how to deal with pain. And then you
Yeah.
think of all of the stuff that came about from like the OxyContin stuff and the opioid epidemic, and it's like, well, no shit,
Totally.
they were trying to offer a solution that just was the wrong solution to a huge issue in the country. So it's like,
Yep.
well, if we can partner with some of these people and be like, hey, I have a solution for these people, and we do it very well, so that your patients will be like very happy with the solution that you gave them, maybe there's something that can happen here. Now it's just a way of doing that where it's like we can create a really awesome win-win. That's going to be important to me too. But yeah, I think that that's the first step. And the other thing that I was thinking about is when I was starting this business, I had a few things in mind that I wanted to change. I saw that one, we don't do a good job of marketing, right? We Doctors across the board are terrible at it. I think that there's an over reliance on word of mouth and referral, right?
Yeah.
Which is
Big time.
great. They're the best patients in the world. But I don't think that we do a great job at all of creating consistent um, acquisition networks for patients. Like we just don't have enough information out there so that people can find us. Okay, so that's the
Right.
one thing I wanted to change. The second thing was that ethical wealth component for good doctors. I think that because of that insurance model, lots of people that can make a lot of money without actually learning how to be a very good doctor and physician. So that was the second thing. It's like people who are doing the work that want to be really good at what they do and help people at the end of the day, they should be rewarded for that. So it's like the more education you get, the
Totally.
better your salary should be, you know? And, you know, at the third thing was just like, well, let's just change the conventional model as much as we can, and I think that that's what we're really focused on. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Creating a new vehicle altogether. And then it's something
Correct.
new. There's, people don't know how to object to that, and they come up with an excuse as to why they're not prioritizing their health.
Hmm.
And this just came to me. This is not a thought out idea, so it might sound stupid out loud.
Those are my
But
favorite.
you you said doctors are terrible at marketing, and really, what at the end of the day, what is a doctor's primary objective? Right, is
Hmm.
is to treat people, make them well again, to treat
Correct.
disease and to promote health. You know, the people who are best at marketing health and selling health aren't even doctors. They're influencers. They're in yoga pants. They're selling some sort of green smoothie, some sort of
Hmm.
mud coffee. They're mushroom coffee. They're selling products and supplements and programs and philosophies and accountability groups all online. And maybe they're
Hmm.
a nutritional counselor or they're certified in life coaching or something like that.
Hmm.
But they're not even doctors. Like they don't have anywhere near the capacity to actually help people that someone like you who's trained and credentialed has. But they figured it out. They're selling health. They're functionally taking your job because you're trying to sell health as well,
Hmm.
right? You see where I'm going with this?
Yes, and I have a solution too, and when I hear you out too.
Oh no, that's like I said, it's not a well conceived idea. That's it. So what's your solution?
Okay. Leverage that. So the thing that I've been doing a lot is offering, I essentially, the behind the scenes of everything is I offer free treatments to people who can get my message out there, right? So I have sponsored athletes who have lots of, social following, right? And so those people are essentially megaphones to what we're doing and how we're doing things differently. And we essentially, every appointment we come in, we bring a tripod, we start to take footage, and we just share, what we're working on that day. And so it's a great way to essentially market yourself without doing all of the hardcore work. Because for me, I'm like, I don't know crap about making a nice video. I don't know how to make a nice looking Instagram post, but these people do it all the time, right? So it's like,
Yeah,
well, why don't we just offer them something that they want, right? Which is they want to perform at their best, right? Let's
sure.
do that for
Yep.
them. But then at the same time, let's just have them show, what we're doing in the office, and that's going to resonate with
Ah,
their audience, right? So it's like we're essentially giving them content, right?
yep.
We're giving them a treatment so that they can essentially keep maximizing their health and their athletic capabilities. But then at the same time, what I'm getting at it, and this is something that I had to get over, was like, I'm offering something for free. This is really hard, right? An hour of my time is free. But then I was just like, okay, what am I getting out of this? I'm not having to do the post. I'm not having
Yep.
to essentially, you know, worry about all the people that I'm not seeing, because of like, I put a post out there and I get like 50 likes on it, where it's like they're getting 3,000, right? It's like all of
Yeah.
that stuff, right? And so it's a way to leverage, which is such an important concept I've found in business, is like, how can we trade things that I'm good at with what you're good at? So you're filling the gaps of like my strengths with your strengths and my weaknesses with your weaknesses.
Oh,
So
that is
yeah,
excellent.
yeah.
So there's I'm going to give you another label for something you've discovered.
Hmm.
User generated content, UGC
Oh,
marketing. Yeah. UGC marketing. You're essentially I saw it was Ian something fitness. I saw
Ian
his you
Smith.
you had a bunch
Yeah.
of needles
Oh,
in his
he's
glute and
been
his
amazing.
looked like a bunt cake of jello, right? Just all satisfying. I loved that video. It was so cool. But at first I'm like, am I seeing what I think I'm seeing? It's a scroll stopper because you're like, oh, there's some guy's butt on my feed, right? Well,
Right.
side butt, it's still butt. But it was really good content for that reason. And like you said, now I understand what that arrangement was,
Mm.
right? Now I get it. At first, I thought,
Yeah.
oh, that's cool. Influencers are seeking him out and for treatment, and right? It gave you so much authority. And sorry if I'm peeling back the curtain for anyone,
I'm
but
all
that's
for
what
it.
it is. That's what it
Right.
is.
And the
You're
thing
you're
is too, it's like it's they are seeking me out. Like there's this level
mhm.
of like, hey, I want to do what you're doing, but like when I sit and talk to them and I'm like, this is what we need to do, I'm like, you have something that essentially money can't buy too. And I'm like, if you want to do this, this is another option. I'd be happy to just treat you once a week. Let's just go through this and like we'll just showcase everything that we're doing so that you can inform other people, because most fitness influencers are like, we want the best for the people, right? Like we want to make people healthy, right? And maybe they don't have the education that we do as doctors, right? So it's like, it's kind of it's a perfect balance is what I'm finding. And it's, for me, it's just like, okay, we have the idea. Now it's just a matter of taking all the data points that we're doing and just
Yeah.
synthesizing that into like a more effective relationship and partnership, you know?
I
So
love that.
getting there,
So
but like that's the goal at the end of the day.
totally. So Doc, I have to ask,
Hmm.
is this all a marketing plan or are you just shooting from the hip as you go?
Aren't we all kind of?
Yes and no. But seriously, did you sit down and say, okay, here's my marketing plan for my practice? Or do you have a
Um,
written marketing plan is my basic question.
yes. And so
Okay.
my partner, like partner in life and I guess partner in the business too. She works with the Greater Philadelphia Coalition Against Hunger, so a nonprofit that's focused on food scarcity in the area. And she is their communications and marketing kind of person. And so she's got
Oh,
tons of just knowledge when it comes to that. And she's an artistic person. So like she helps me. She's the person that's putting the content out there on the platform. If anything looks unrefined, that's probably me. And then anything
right.
that looks nice is absolutely 100% her, right? So it's
Got
like
it.
these behind the scenes, because I'm like, you know, trying to learn like who can we put on a team that's essentially going to fill the gaps, right? And
Yeah,
right now
totally.
I'm reading, sorry if this is a tangent, but I'm reading Traction EOS by Gino Wickman. And it's like, holy shit, like I'm the visionary and I just need like the integration component of everything. So yeah, and I think that there's a lot of things that I've learned along the way. Like my boss that I was working with previously, Jason Krantz, he was doing this, with Instagram affiliates too, offering free treatments, just showcasing things, and he's still doing it. He's doing a great job, and I learned that from him, and I was like, yeah, this is brilliant. Like let's implement this. But for
Totally.
me, I'm trying to take it a step further and systematize it. Like let's create some kind of system where we can write this process down so that I can take a step back and be like, all right, you're a doctor here. I want you to be successful. I want you to essentially start treating these people and start to like
Yep.
build your own following, right? Because for me, it's not about Dr. Aidan Kaye. It's about Podium, the brand that can actually help people. Because
Mm,
treatment doesn't live and die with me. That's why I have Dr. Stephanie on board, because she's an expert with movement, right? I'll give people the foundation, but beyond that, I don't have the education, right? It's like we want to take people through a roadmap and a plan so that, they're getting everything that they can. And I think that, my ego is not involved in like, okay, sweet, that's it. You're just going to stick with me the rest of your life. We have to kind of use everybody and all of the systems of knowledge and all of these affiliates and other people in our network to essentially get that person what they want. So it's very
no,
important to me.
that's awesome. Yeah, I love it. You're not the stereotypical doctor. When people think of doctors, they think of big egos, right? And maybe you're a plastic surgeon, you drive a Ferrari to and from works, 7 days
Hmm.
a week, and there's a bit of an ego there, right? But
Mm.
that's just totally not you at all. Like you're the polar opposite. You're like the long-haired, if I could use the word, almost hippie who just wants to see people live their best life
There
and
it
be
is. Grateful
happy.
Dead shirt.
And
Yeah, no, I've I've gone through my own personal journey with that though,
yeah,
Jared. Like a huge influence in what I've had to overcome is Gabor Mate's work.
yeah.
And if you listen to him deeply, he says that us as doctors have our own trauma of just being wanted. And it's very
Mm,
true. Like my trauma, I guess, is that like I accept love based on what I can give first. And so that's been something I've had to personally overcome. And I think that understanding myself has been a huge boon to not only my patient care, but also to being able to be like, well, I don't want to just make money. That's not the end goal of all of this. It's how can we change the world a little bit and, come out on, smelling good along the way.
I
And
love that.
it's
That's go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, it's like this give and take mentality from Adam Grant. It's like we have to. It's like the people who give. those are the people that actually end up being more successful than those who take, because that comes back around eventually.
Yes.
People sniff that
Yes.
out, you know? And so
Totally.
like, how can we essentially change this stuff, but like do it in a way that's sustainable, I guess, you know, because
Yeah.
it's very important to do it that way. So yeah, and
Man.
like I've had to go through this, like, okay, well, you have to kill the ego a bit, you know, because
Mm-hmm.
if you don't, then it's going to be very selfish, you know, and think about culture in a company. You don't want that CEO that's just the taker all the time, right? Because then he's making a bunch of money and everybody feels undervalued. So it's
Sure.
like, all right, well, if we can actually have conversations with the people that are in the business, it's like, what do people want as like young doctors and, you know, people who are coming on board to treat? It's like they want to say in things, they want to feel valued. They don't want to just feel like a number, and that their success metrics are all based on how many patients and how much they're making for the business. Like,
Yep.
sure, that's a component, but like I want to give people like, oh, you want to be successful, you want to learn a lot, like sweet, that's our goals then. You know, like there's a place for that. You know, it's like, and
Yeah.
whatever else your goals are, like let's make that happen. Oh, you want to be like, you know, you want to run a clinic? We can make that happen too, right? I'll teach you
Yeah.
everything that I know. You'll be able to make a lot of money there, but you're taking on a lot of responsibilities. Um,
Right.
Somebody that I've just recently met, his name's J.R. Burgess, and amazing mentor to me. He's incredible. And he was saying that like when he interviews people, he's like, I want you to essentially be better than I am. I want
Yeah.
you to take my job someday. You know,
Yep.
if that's
Build
what you want to do,
to
you can
stand
be
on
a
his
grower.
shoulders and grow from there. And that's, that's, I know you're a Hermosi guy. You know who that
Ah,
is. And I've been
amazing.
listening to him for years, a couple years now, not like forever, but a couple years.
Hmm.
And,
Yeah.
I knew right away, okay, this guy's the real deal. First of all,
Hmm.
I'm a marketer. I know if he's telling the truth, he's telling the truth. And secondly,
Oh yeah.
he's giving away the secrets, really truly is.
That's yep.
And with his
100%.
train with his knowledge. Crap, where was I going with this?
That's okay. I've done it before already.
It really barely. Dang it! Oh my goodness.
I'll
Um,
talk and I'll see if it comes back. Is that all right?
yeah, yeah. I was going to wrap all this around with giving. Oh, that
Oh,
was it.
okay. I know
Giving.
exactly what
Kind
you're
of kind of
going.
bringing
Hmm.
back this around a little bit. You know, the success in your life. I think for most of us, and for me, I realized this recently. I don't want to be horribly filthy rich. You know how exhausting that sounds?
Hmm.
To have so much money you have to keep tabs on all the time, where you can just never chill and just relax.
Hmm.
Where it's like, okay, I'm worth $117 million. I've got friends from high school trying to reach out to me. I've got all these business opportunities trying to get investment money from me. I've got all these people who want me to give to their cause. I've got all these properties that are constantly trying to burn down that I've got to keep running. I've got tenants who aren't paying. I've got, businesses that are struggling. I've got all this crap. That sounds
Hmm.
exhausting. I don't want that in life.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Some people
Hmm.
do, and I'm not knocking that. And I know that guys that operate, I know why I was mentioning Hermosi, operating at
Hmm.
that level, that 9 and 10 figure level, and others like them, they're a different breed. But I
Oh
don't
yeah.
think most people are like them. For me, I realized I sat down, and of course with inflation and as my life changes, this number will change. But I realized if I just paid myself a meager $150,000 a year, I will
That's my
have
number. Yeah.
really, I will
Yeah.
have enough money to live the day-to-day lifestyle I want. Like I'm not
Hmm.
in, like I don't drive a new car. I think cars are dumb. Like they're not,
Me too. Yep.
I don't, I
100%.
don't like it gets me from point A to point B most of the time. That's
Hmm.
all I need.
Hmm.
I don't need a brand new house that no one's ever lived in before. I
Hmm.
mean, this house was built in the 50s. I'm sure you can tell from the awesome cedar accents.
Love it.
There there's like I don't shop a lot. Like I have my clothes that I like, and that's it.
Hmm.
I don't have a ton of expensive hobbies. I like to garden. I mean, dirt is free, air is free, water is almost free, seeds are a few bucks. Like so, for $150,000, I could live where I want to live, drive what I
Hmm.
want to drive, feed my family, and then still have about 60,000 left over to take a vacation every other month. and spend $10,000 on a vacation with my
There you go.
family. And you could do all that, which I don't think I could. I honestly couldn't spend 60 G's a year on vacationing. There's just no way. I don't think I actually, if I tried, could do that. So
Yeah.
150,000 for most Americans is just doubling your income, right? It's not that much more. So why do we need a bunch of money? We really don't. So if we say, well, if we just want to help people and change our industries, let's just focus on the giving. And this is why I mentioned Hermosi. You can focus on the giving, and then all the success will come to you. It will come back around and give you what you want. And I believe I've watched other people do it, where it's become one of those things that I believe. It's not like, well, yeah, I know I have to go through all the failures, but deep down that I still don't believe it. No, I believe that if you just give to others what you can, it'll all come back around. And I was so if I could use the word stoked to hear you say that's what you're all about in your practice, and that's what you see medicine as being, where I'm going to bring it way back to something you said earlier. Have you heard of the value ladder?
Oh, someone had mentioned it, but I never explored a
Okay.
lot of it. But tell
So,
me if I'm wrong. This is what I think it is. It's like you offer something, you know, very low cost, and then they trust, and then next thing you know, you can offer them the next thing, and then the next thing, and the next thing. But I could be totally off with that. But it
yeah,
seemed like
so
something that Alex was
you're on
talking about with the three different kinds of
you're on track,
offers. Okay.
right? So you're talking about maybe a sales funnel, which is very similar to a value ladder. So a
Uh-huh.
value ladder is it's a little bit more zoomed out and big picture than just a sales funnel.
Yeah.
So a value ladder is I want to offer a way to help someone at every financial level possible. I want to help someone for $0. I want to help someone for $7. I want to help someone for $100. I want to help someone for 1,000, for 10,000, 100,000. I want a $1 million offer. So if someone can, wants me to go live with them at the top of the Himalayas for a year, they have to pay me $1 million to shut down my life, to disappear and make it happen. But I'll do it. So, but there's
Yeah.
that offer, right? So you'll help someone for free, and you'll help someone for $1 million and everywhere in between. But there's a ladder to it, right? That's a after you've helped someone for free, what's the next step? They pay you a little bit of money, and then you help them solve that problem, and they have another problem, a bigger problem that they want your help with. And so that's what the ladder is. Does that make sense? I'm sure it does
100%.
to you. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's funny because the way I've been thinking about it is like, okay, let's figure out how we can offer a premium service and then bring it down to that level because like I'd love to treat everybody for free, but that's also my trauma. It's like, I wanted to treat everybody for free and
yeah.
just help, right? But
Yep.
I realized that I get burnt out that way, right? But if there's
Oh,
a
totally.
way that I can take myself away from that and be like, here's a free resource, right?
Yeah.
And then just build it from there. But yeah, anyway, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. What does Andrew Huberman call it? The resources, and he's a toolkit. He's like, here's a toolkit I'm going to give you. It's
hmm
just knowledge, right?
hmm
And some systems, but he's found a
It's do
way
it
to
yourself.
treat people for free. Yeah.
hmm
So he's an expert in neuroscience, and he says, I'm going to treat people for free. So I'm going to put my information out there, and it's just electrons, so I can duplicate it and then get it to everyone, and it doesn't burn him out to do it. And
He
I really
loves
think
it.
that's the path, man. And that's why it's amazing to live in the age that we live in, where publishing and sharing information, I mean, it is a double-edged sword, right?
hmm
On one
Oh
hand,
yeah.
it's never been easier to give people good information, but on the other hand, it's never been easier to spread crap. So we have to be careful.
Are you familiar with Lane Norton?
I am not. Who is
So
Lane Norton?
his tag on Instagram is BioLane, BioLayne. He is essentially a bodybuilder power lifter that went to um, school and got his doctorate in muscle protein synthesis and nutrition. Okay. And I love his stuff because he's essentially recognizing that there's a bunch of crap on the internet. And he
Yeah.
has these posts that are hilarious where he essentially calls back. It's like he plays the post and like they say their outlandish stuff. And then he's like, now here's the real deal, because like this is not research, and here's actually what the research says, and he just calls him out. And I'm like, he's got a huge
Wow.
following. He's an awesome guy, and very smart. And he essentially is, and like I'm sure that there's nuances. He's very black and white when it comes to research, which is great. Um, but also we have to push the envelope a little bit, I believe, with like research, because how are we going to find out new things? But I love that he just breaks it down to just here's the deal. Like this is bullshit, essentially. Pardon my French, but
Yeah.
like this is, like you can't say that stuff, because people essentially take that, like Liver King, for example. The dude just came out and just said that, yeah, I use anabolic steroids and that's how I am the way I am. Everybody knows it, but people love it because it's so sensationalized, right?
Yeah.
And it's so outlandish and sensationalized that people are following it for like almost dramatic effect. But then because now he has a following, there are people that are following him to essentially take what he's saying and start to implement that, which is
Mm.
not good, right? So it's
Yeah.
like that's the danger of it all. And so essentially, we have to do our research, and we have to vet these people. And I think that the
Right.
only way that we can is like have people like you or I or something like that to really say like, this guy's actually legit, like Huberman legit, Ling Norton legit. There's a lot of other people that you may not be able to, because they're forced to essentially make content so that they can stay relevant.
We should probably compile some sort of list of evidence-based purveyors of health knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Because it should be fairly easy to verify if someone claims a study and cites a study. A Google search will tell you whether or not they're telling the truth,
Right. The
right?
problem is a lot of
I,
people don't cite them. Or if they do, it's kind of it's a case study from the 80s that is okay. That's one example, right?
yeah, yeah.
How can you
You
base
know,
a theory or a concept on a case study? N equals one. You can't, right?
don't
Like,
don't even get me started on studies.
me either.
Studies are not they have been when you say according to studies, what study,
Right.
which study, how many studies, hey, has this study been debunked? Are we
Hmm.
going to are we going to have another situation where we create mass psychosis based on some faulty study from 30
Hmm.
years ago
Yeah.
that has already been disproven? So
Hmm.
it's really important, even if someone says it's a study and it's cited, if you're, I'm going back to what you said, personally
Hmm.
accountable for your health, you might want to check in on that before you just adopt something into your life without verifying facts. There was, during the Reagan administration, Gorbachev had a saying, trust but verify. Right? He talking about what their policy towards the U.S. Trust but verify.
Hmm.
I think that's what he was talking about. Like, we'll
Hmm.
trust you, but we're going to verify it
We're going to
first.
do our
So
homework
we
on
have
it
an
too.
attitude of
Yeah.
trust, yeah, and we'll just make sure it's true. Why don't we
Hmm.
do that with the things we put in our bodies, or choose to keep out of our bodies for that matter? Um, because some cute influencer on Instagram told us so.
And I would say that this is contributing to the issue with eating disorders in the country as well,
Mm,
because we're hearing a lot of information where it's like, oh, I should eat broccoli, but then, carnivore diet says I shouldn't eat broccoli. And it's like you're hearing
yeah.
all of these conflicting data points, so then you're following all of them. And next thing you know, all you're eating is eggs and, celery all your life. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, I've eliminated all these things, and it's like now I feel so conflicted on everything that I'm putting in my body. Now I'm not getting anything good, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a simplification of the complex theme of that, but I feel that there's a lot of issues, and I think that I've struggled with this, in my life, where I'm like looking at the back of the box of everything that I'm putting in and being like, oh, I can't eat this because it's got this in it, right? And
Yeah.
I think I like your the way that you were saying it before with like, oh, I just, go and eat Taco Bell, like whatever. It's like you're never going to
Moderation.
completely prevent stuff, right? And I think it
Right.
comes down to awareness, especially with
Yep.
nutrition and diet. It's like, okay, I know that this is not the best thing, but also you got to live a little. you know?
Right. Like you're only here once. But
Right.
a real example
Hmm.
that is something I discovered on my own. So I for years I just had really bad just GI health, right? I
Hmm.
just was, I was always had, my stomach would always be upset or I'd always be hurting or something. And we always thought
Hmm.
we thought it was IBS. I went and got checked out, did a lab test, everything normal. And just for unrelated reasons, I just started drinking less beer.
Hmm.
I was a beer a day person for years.
Hmm.
And for really no reason at all other than just I don't need it. Like I didn't think it was unhealthy or anything. Within a couple of weeks, like everything corrected. I was like, wait a minute. You're telling me my very light consumption, but regular consumption of alcohol wasn't just beer, because pretty much consumption of any alcohol, like the next day, I am, even if it's literally a drink. I'm
Hmm.
not talking about overconsumption.
Hmm.
My whole GI tract is just all screwing. I don't feel normal.
Hmm.
But everyone's like, oh yeah, alcohol is fine for you. You can have a glass of red wine a day is healthy, and it's so normalized
Hmm.
that it's like you're some kind of square if you say, hey, maybe we shouldn't just be drinking all the time, right?
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
like we
yes.
don't smoke cigarettes, but drinking is so normalized and celebrated
Hmm.
that we the issues that for me personally they weren't terrible, like they were manageable, but it's
Hmm.
still like it sucked to have constantly feeling in my abdomen like things were always a little off. And
Yes.
my doctor knew that I drank every day. I had a beer a day, right? I wasn't out getting inebriated, but I'd have a beer a day. I would go through a six pack
Hmm.
a week.
Hmm. Hmm.
Well, he didn't say anything. Why?
Hmm.
I can't be the only. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a researcher, and I figured this out. Surely there's been a study, and this is taught somewhere at some university, that by the way, if your patient is showing these symptoms, I mean it's got to be in a reference book somewhere, and they
Hmm.
consume alcohol, have them cut that out and see what happens. Like it's somewhere that's got to be like I can't be the only one to figure this out. But it's again just because it's socially acceptable or socially unacceptable doesn't mean that it's healthy.
Hmm.
I'm not a nutritionist. I'm out of my depth here,
Hmm.
but I just don't see how vegetation, broccoli, collard greens are going to hurt you. They taste good.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, if I fill my stomach with them, I might get a little gassy, but that happens if I eat one of any food, right? Pretty
Right.
much.
Hmm.
But for the most part, why are these things being demonized suddenly? Because a group of people says it is. Like so, you just gotta. I don't know. And I might again be out of line. You got to find honestly what works for you. If eating Brussels sprouts tears you up and you feel like crap, just don't eat Brussels sprouts. Don't tell everyone else who enjoys
Which I
Brussels
doubt's the
sprouts. Don't.
case, but yeah.
Right. Like, but don't
Yeah.
tell everyone else that they're bad.
Right.
It's just
I
like you have a problem with them. You're allergic or something. I don't know.
I think that it comes back around to, how long did that doctor spend with you, right? If it was 10
Yeah.
minutes, maybe it's just like, oh, well, is it even worth like trying to change a habit? Because like at that age, we're at that spectrum, we're trying to change like something that you do regularly, that
Right.
maybe they're because of something where it's like the end of the day, you just like to kick back with a beer because it makes you feel better, right? Like, so I
Yep.
think that's the problem that a lot of docs have is like, well, if I even say anything, is it going to rest on deaf ears? And like, I'm just wasting my
Uh,
energy to say this, right? So I think that's the thing, because I hear that from a lot of like my doctor friends who are doing something different, where they're trying to spend more time with patients. Um, so that's one component. But then also there's a lot of variables there too, right?
mm-hmm.
It's like, sure, we understand that alcohol is a toxin. Okay. Yes, it's normalized, and that's terrible. Like there's a lot of people's addictions that are essentially normalized, right?
Yep.
Um, Working, shopping, alcohol, smoking, sex, porn use, like all of these things is like they're all kind of normalized, right? And it's only when somebody's off their wagon that's like, oh crap, we have to say something to this person. But then
Right.
also the other component too would be like, well, there's gluten in beer, right? So like maybe there's a gluten sensitivity there. Maybe it's only
Sure.
towards certain things, right? So it's like all of these different things that it's like hard to say like if this, then that. Because it's like again, it's that Dunning-Kruger effect, like if this, then maybe this, maybe this, maybe this, right? So
Right.
it's tough. And I think that
That's
that's
interesting.
Mhm. I think that's also why like I trust a lot of the people who come to me and they say like they're dealing with, X, Y, or Z, and maybe I'm not an expert at it. I'm always like, well, tell me what your experience is with this. Because like
Hmm.
you have been living with this in your body for much longer than I could even possibly understand in the even the hour that I spend with it, but definitely less than 10 minutes most doctors spend. Like I
Sure.
want you to tell me everything that you've researched, and then we can go from there because obviously all that stuff hasn't, let's find something that does. So
Hmm. No, total.
yeah,
That's
it's
smart too, and I think at least for me, that would be a breath of fresh air to feel like I have a partner in my health,
oh, I
not a
think that
glorified lab test ordering device
mhm,
or someone who just does physical exams, right? And then I
mhm.
never hear from. Like I want a partner.
It's
Yeah.
something that I think is coming out more and more, and something I've actually
Mm.
talked a lot about is we don't need doctors as much as we think we do. It's much more so that I think we need coaches. We need like a
Interesting.
colleague, we need a partner, we need somebody who's essentially not only going to help us but guide us down this new path that we're taking. Um, because it's much less the day and age of like my doctor's going to give me this pill and then everything's going to be better. We're learning that that's not the case, and so
Yep.
we have
We're
to
waking
essentially
up.
help people grow. And I think that's
Yeah.
essentially what I like to do as that's what I love to do, you know.
Good.
And that may change in my career of like, maybe I'll help people grow in other ways than just patient care. But right now that's what it looks like and I'm passionate about it. And yeah, we'll see. But I think that that's a huge thing. It's like we need people who can essentially walk with us along a path rather than just tell us where to go. Because there's going to be
Totally.
questions that we have along that journey where we're like, am I doing things right? And then that's where you can like, text me and be like, yeah, that's great, awesome. Or like, no, I would just modify it this way, right?
Yeah. Well, I got to say, the future seems very exciting. I'm not in your shoes, but from the outside looking in, the future looks pretty bright for you. You have a fresh perspective on
Thank you.
medicine, on the healthcare system, on patient relationships, on the outcomes we can expect, just the entire paradigm. Like you said, you've always had to figure it out on your own. It wasn't good enough just to learn about it from someone else, and I can really tell from the way that you are envisioning medicine is to be practiced in your practice from
Hmm.
today over the next, who knows, 10, 20, 30, 40, 80 years, however long you last, right? That is exciting. That's what I wasn't quite sure what to expect on this podcast because again, most of the doctors that I get to agree to share something with me all have
Hmm.
been around 10, 15, 20, 30 years.
Oh yeah,
Their perspective
interesting.
is, I wouldn't say cemented, but they're tempered with experience,
Hmm.
and there's a way of seeing things in human nature, right? Doctors are people too.
Hmm.
You are going to operate within the bounds of your environment, whether that's a whether that
Mm.
perception is reality or not. That's how you operate. But having someone who's never you haven't, your limits haven't been set yet. You haven't set your limits, and I was wondering what that would do. And you have a very interesting perspective. And
Mm.
I know that we need to wrap this up, so we'll go ahead and do that. But I cannot wait for us to marinate on this for a couple of weeks and do this again sometime and maybe dive
I would
deeper into
absolutely love
something
to.
we brushed over because there's so much here to unpack that there's just no way we can cover it all in one conversation. So, is there anything that you want to close with? Anything you want to tell the people before we go?
We've touched on so many things. I mean, it's
We
tough to
have.
just think about one thing and no, I can't think of anything without going
That's
off on
fine.
another tangent, so I think it's best that I don't.
That's wise. That's wise. Well, Doc, I really appreciate your time.
Mm.
I appreciate the generosity of your knowledge. You're so forthcoming, and I can tell you have a very genuine desire to help people. Just your pursuit of knowledge alone is testament to that. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate your insight as well. It's such a breath of fresh air, just like you said, coming from different perspectives. I love talking to people and just experiencing all of the different, avenues of knowledge that we've all come to, because just like with my patients, I learn every single day from just talking to people. So it's just been an absolute pleasure with you, Jared. Thank you.
Man, it's very mutual.